Roli,
What's up?
how you doing, man?
Good. Let me see it. My screen seems a little hazy. Let me try to. Hmm. Is it the sun behind me? Maybe
Yeah,
that
probably.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
The sun is gonna set there. Let me think. I'm just gonna go up to my loft.
All right, no problem.
I can't really. I live in a cabin in the woods. It's kind of
Yeah,
tight.
man, I saw that. It's nice, like.
Y- Yeah, thanks, man. I love it, but it does come with sacrifices. Um, the I can't sit on the bed because the light coming in is messing with the video, so I'm gonna go to the loft. Um,
Arkansas has some pretty sweet cabins, man.
yeah, mine's pretty dope. It's small, so I was able to build it with really nice finishes. Because like why not use cedar for the ceiling if it's not that much cedar.
Right, right, right.
So that's kind of what I did. So yeah, I was. You'll have to have my longtime coach on sometime, Matt Hamilton.
Yeah,
He
I
was
remember him.
from the
Pink
underground.
singlet.
Yeah, the pink singlet, man. Yeah, we go way back, man. I mean, uh, we're we're still business partners and involved in a few different projects together and stuff. He's one of the old ones, man. One of the like I'm old school, but he was in it before me, so he was the like really you know the I guess you would call like the Eric Paulsons and stuff, like the first generation. I think Matt would be like the second generation, and I would be probably the third generation of.
Yeah, I was at his fights in Super Brawl. I
Oh
think
yeah,
1999. Yeah.
yeah. That like back in the day, his like little ass had to fight,
Yeah.
like Ryan Bowe and like some. He was fighting at 55, and he finished
Right.
his career at like 25. So pretty common story. Those
So
guys.
maybe like people, I always kind of start when I'm talking to people from like our era, NHB era, like people, if there's people out there who don't know you, kind of like introduce yourself as far as.
Yeah. So I've been doing MMA since 1998 and training out of Arkansas. I trained with Matt Hamilton. At the time, we were training out of a guy named Danny Dring's gym and just kind of came up traveling all over the continental U.S. training. Ended up getting lucky and getting on to the Ultimate Fighter. So I had a few fights in the UFC. I did an undercard fight for Bellator. Um, So kind of just fought kind of all the different levels of MMA and got out before it was totally dominated by athletes, kind of like it is now. So it was a good time for a unathletic guy like me to showcase what jujitsu and good training could do. I beat a lot of guys that were much better built than I was, much more athletic, and that's what the landscape was at the time, and it was a fun journey.
But coming up in Arkansas, which wasn't really maybe a hotbed for the game at that time, maybe talk about that.
Oh, it was
You're one of
tough,
the first
man.
guys.
Yeah, we just didn't have a clue, and we didn't have wrestling at the time, so we didn't know how to cut weight at all. We just dieted in the beginning. We literally didn't go to saunas. We would just starve ourselves, and then we'd go fight guys. And Matt really, uh, he was fighting already when I started training with him, and so I just kind of piggybacked off him, and we would just trap. The trap for us, Todd, was we were the big dogs in Arkansas because we were actually training, MMA, NHB, um, and so it was tough when you'd go other places where they had better competition. They were doing more tournaments and stuff, and that really slowed me down, and Matt as well in our development. We were light years ahead of most people around us, but it was tough. It was definitely an uphill battle to like I remember fighting in North Dakota when I was barely a pro, and there were like Tony Ferguson and Bob Cook and like all these guys on the van with us, and like they had access to much more in-depth training than we did at the time. So coming out of Arkansas really, really was tough. Now with the internet, we've been able to build, we've been able to catch up and do our thing. And obviously we have fighters in the UFC now, and I've trained, like a world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at a black belt level. So we've caught up, but those early days, we didn't know what we didn't know, and it was tough.
So when did you feel like, because I know you have like your own school now, when did you feel like you were ready to kind of um, transfer into that or pass into that, so to speak?
It it was after I got back from the Ultimate Fighter that things started. Uh, I mean, we always had good fighters, and we always did well. I don't mean to say that we were lackluster, but we never compared ourselves like at a local level. We always compared ourselves at a national level. And the UFC was a big eye-opening experience for me. Um, Winning a lot of fights at the regional level, and then fighting people that were coming from really well-established gyms. After the Ultimate Fighter really started, and Matt and I both really started honing in on our boxing. And we had Aaron Fisher, who's an American that lived in Thailand, really help us with our Thai clinch and our Thai boxing. And started linking up with different people and really, really taken off. Where now, we have really good fighters out of here, and they can still, like my fighters cross train a lot and go to other camps and stuff, and they do fantastic when they cross train, and they learn a lot, and they also have things that come from us that we do really well as well. So yeah, like after the Ultimate Fighter, I think that's when, like, shortly after that, we kind of tidied up some things, and now I feel like it's Westside MMA is the gym that Matt and I run, and it truly, like, we can truly take somebody and get them to a UFC level and be very, very competitive at this point.
But I mean, you were kind of known for jujitsu. That was kind of your forte.
Hmm.
Maybe I would say the area where you felt you were strongest and people identified you with. Um, what do you think of what you're seeing now as opposed to back then?
Yeah, there's patterns. You have you have different eras, right? Jiu-jitsu had its era, and then the sprawl and brawl era, was a thing for a while. And now we've got the anti-jiu-jitsu era where people are fighting to get back up, and we're basically watching kickboxing matches because the nature of 5-minute rounds and stand-ups, the energy output for a takedown, most fighters just aren't willing to invest in the takedowns to get the fight to the ground. And the level of wrestling and folk style wrestling, of getting back to your feet and cage walking. Now what we're seeing is athletes staying on their feet, and they're using the cage a lot more. They're bouncing all over the cage. They're engaging and disengaging, not staying in the pocket, not spending a lot of time in the clinch, definitely not spending much time on the ground. So it's definitely not the golden era, and it gets kind of boring sometimes. Same with jiu-jitsu. We're seeing a lot of like double butt scooting, and you're not seeing a progression of positions. You're seeing a lot of leg entanglements and things that aren't really as fan friendly. Like a Dominic Cruz, for example. I'm a huge I wouldn't say a huge fan, but I have so much respect for his game. But like, some people love him, but a lot of people watch that and it's like too much. It's like, just sit on a punch, and
Hmm.
um, I mean, he just looked great in his last fight, by the way. But yeah, what we're seeing now, it's just more of the athletes, people, a real level playing field. You have your outliers, you have your Bryce Mitchells, Damian Maya is getting older now, but he had his time in the, you had the Rodolfo Vieiras, you have these guys that'll pop up and show what happens if a high level jiu-jitsu guy gets another guy down. But the majority of the people are just kind of all doing the same things now. You can look at, like, you find a 7-0, 8-2 fighter from wherever, name a gym, and it's a 24-year-old looking kid from Iowa or Nebraska or Missouri, and they all fight the same. They got pretty good hands. They have good takedown defense. They get back up when they're taken down, and the fights are um, not spectacular style
What?
wise.
Why do you think everybody's struggled to deal with Gordon Ryan, so to speak? As a jiu-jitsu guy watching
Mm.
that, grappling in general.
Uh, I think it's a perfect storm of a very impressive athlete with a ton of aptitude, focusing on no gi, much like Eddie Bravo and those guys did, um, with an amazing coach in John Danaher. And I think it's a perfect storm. You take an athlete, and other people have done this, what he's doing. Hidalgo had his time in the at the top, and Buchecha before him had his time at the top, and then you had guys like Royler Gracie who were undefeated for like 6 years. Other people have done it, but Gordon, I think Gordon, it's like there's no magic pill. He has a ton of aptitude. He gained weight. He was much smaller. But he's a heavyweight that's all muscle. There's no wasted meat on him, and he has an amazing coach in John Danaher, an amazing full-time training regimen. He's not doing gi and no gi, and I just he's a once in a lifetime athlete. He's quite impressive. I think that's what it is, man. Nothing, no magic touch or anything. A great coach, full-time dedication, and a ton of aptitude.
But he's kind of unique, and maybe like Marcelo was, to where he's submitting almost all the people he faces.
Yeah,
Where you aren't
that's
really
true.
seeing that with the other athletes.
That's absolutely true. He is. Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for that. It's like some wrestlers were winning all the time, and other wrestlers are pinning, and he is submitting people, and he's calling his submissions. Now, these submissions he's calling, he's got a huge size advantage over these guys, and it's a 30-minute match, so that's helping him. He's not using the whole 30 minutes, and I'm in no way gonna
Hmm.
belittle what he's doing, but calling your submissions, but he's got a huge size advantage on some of these guys. Now, when these other guys step up and actually fight him, if he can call a submission against Felipe Pena, I'm sure wants to get paid to avenge, to fight him, that will be like something. But he's amazing, and he has great marketing. And he wins at IBJJF tournaments, but he typically does, control the rule set as well. He's kind of like the Gracies back in the day. He's competing in his rule set, but make no mistake about it, I believe he's the best pound for pound grappler in the world, and um, there's nothing else to say. I'm a fan.
But we've seen these leg entanglements continue to thrive. Why are people not able to figure it out? I mean, because these techniques have been around for a long time.
I think people are figuring it out. Yeah, I think people are. I mean, he's you have it's a great submission, but there's a lot of matches now where you're seeing these guys get in the leg entanglements, and the guys are escaping them, and they're defending them, and they're turning the heel towards the ribs. And Felipe Pena, for example, he shut down Gord's leg entanglements and then took his back from them. I'm pretty sure if Gordon fights him again, he won't attack the legs. He'll put the energy in the passing. So at the highest level, I think we're starting to see that. People, I do believe people are figuring it out. And then at the lower levels, yeah, I think it's cultural. If your coach never really did leg locks, then people teach what they're good at. And so if generationally, like, you have your outliers that are learning from YouTube and DVD sets and digital downloads, and they're learning it outside of their academies. But majority of people are learning their jiu-jitsu from their instructor, and their instructor didn't come up in that era. So you need these like new school black belts to have their own students, so that you can have like everybody kind of very aware of basic heel hook defense and strategy.
Now, obviously, Bryce Mitchell, he's having a lot of success in the UFC. When did you first meet this guy?
Oh, I don't know. Bryce started training with another old school uh, MMA fighter named William McLaughlin, and he came up in the era just right. He started training maybe shortly after I did, and he's one of my best friends, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he we were always together. And so Bryce was a student of his, and Bryce was always cross training with us. And I don't know when that was, maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, he'd come in the gym and cross train. And since then he's transitioned over here full time. His coach moved, and there were some changes, you know, for him training wise. But yeah, I'd say probably 8, 9 years ago, you know,
So he's a teenager, probably.
he was young. He was
Yeah.
very, he was thinner than he is now. He wasn't as muscular. Um, just looked like a little boy, you know, and same attitude, same energy. He'd come in the gym and um, you know Abel Cullum, you familiar with him? He fought out of California, real good MMA fighter, and he has a brother that moved here who's a little black belt. He's really tough, in Jeremiah Cullum, and you know, like there were times Bryce would come to the gym and I'd tap him out with whatever I wanted to. And he'd always ask me how it happened and keep training. Never had an ego about it. Jeremiah Colon would tap him like a million times. And um, he would seek us out and train all the time. And then just sometime around like 5 years ago, it, it just switched and you just weren't tapping Bryce anymore. And then, you know, over the past 5 years, he's become a world-class grappler. And it's, it's a lot to take in. He's a very intelligent grappler, a very intelligent grappler, and he's very innovative. You know, people think like jujitsu was invented by black belts, and it was invented by purple belts, like blue and purple belts figuring stuff out. And Bryce is putting stuff together and doing things that are just absolutely amazing and different than traditional jujitsu, different than catch wrestling. Um, it's what he's doing, and he's developing these sequences, and just I love seeing him on the mat in the cage, because you get to see it kind of like, you know, the gym is one thing, but then all of a sudden you see him shutting people down at the UFC level, and it's a great thing to see.
Yeah, and that's something you were talking about earlier. Why do you think, why is he so successful initiating this grappling style? Because you don't see it a lot anymore.
Well, you know, there's a lot of factors to that. One, he's a very eclectic guy. You know, like he believes in himself. He believes he can beat anybody, and um, he's not scared of anybody. So when he goes to fight, he's not holding back. He's taking the chances. He's spending the energy, pushing the pace, and taking the shots, because deep down he believes that he's going to beat the person. So if you believe that, why wouldn't you put yourself out there? That's like something Marcelo said that always stuck with me. Is he wasn't scared to lose. He believed in his game. He wasn't scared to lose. And Bryce doesn't appear to be scared to lose. He believes he's going to win, and he puts himself out there to do it. Um, and that's not something most people have. Like you've got to be kind of an eclectic guy, have a certain personality type for that to be the case. And he has that personality type. You, you, another
But
aspect. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Another aspect to that question is the fact that he doesn't want to get hit in the head unnecessarily. Like, you know, he's a tough guy. Like you know, he's been punched in fights, and you know, he doesn't like, he'll take a punch just fine. He doesn't have a weak chin or anything, but he doesn't want to just play rock'em sock'em. You know, he respects his brain, he respects his body. And so if you look at a fight that way, it's much less trauma if you're Khabibing people. And so he's out there Khabibing people.
Yeah, but why do you, I mean, you were just talking about this earlier in the interview. It seems like, especially the American fighters, there's a lot less of them that can get the takedown and keep it.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? I mean, Bryce is able to execute that, but you're seeing it less and less.
Yeah. Credit to Bryce, because I mean, I do teach mat wrestling, spiral rides, leg rides, wrist control, hand control over the wrist, things of that nature. Um, but his brain, his fight IQ, he is taking you down into control points and into progressions, whereas other fighters are playing checkers and they're taking you down. And then they're going to figure it out. Some ground and pound. We'll see what you do. I don't know. You know what I mean? You cage walk. I try to do a mat return if you get up. But Bryce is all like, I'll tell you like this. You memorize a phone number in threes and twos. That's how the brain works. Like 501, there's 3, 8287. There's 2 twos.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the brain works, right? Most fighters throw a jab cross. Some will throw a jab cross hook, right? Bryce isn't thinking in twos and threes. Bryce is in fours, fives, and sixes. And that's why he's able to take these people down and control them, because he's already 4 or 5 steps ahead, and they're thinking in twos and threes. And that's a real thing. Like, that's you shoot, I sprawl, I peek out. I shoot, you sprawl, I peek out. Okay. Bryce shoots, you sprawl, he peeks out. You step over to mount him. He's already coming between your legs, back up on a single, thinking about running the pipe and or driving into you. He is on 4 or 5, and he loses people there and drowns them.
So you think it's more important, like people that are intelligence is more important in grappling than maybe your athletic ability?
I wouldn't
Although
say
yes,
that, because
both.
he's incredibly athletic. I think if he had my lungs and my body, he wouldn't be Bryce Mitchell. He'd be much better than I am, I'm sure, but he wouldn't be Bryce Mitchell. He has both, but and it's not just intelligence. It's like a weird thing. Like I tell people, like, you don't want a genius as a fighter, because they'll overanalyze, overthink things. They'll see everything. You want somebody who's smart enough to follow directions and do what they believe in, but not overthink it. And so it's not just intelligence. Like, it's definitely intelligence in the fight game, but it's really hard. He's such an enigma. It's really hard, to use words to describe him, because there's so many layers to him. But I will say that he believes in himself. He doesn't really do classes. He comes in and drills stuff on his own. But he's very coachable. It's such a weird dynamic. He'll do anything I ask him to do, but he won't come in and do warm-ups and do what everybody else is doing. He'll grab somebody who's not a super high level guy at all, and then put them in positions and have them resist. And he'll just live role play different scenarios and find what works for him, and then he'll do them. And a lot of the stuff that he starts doing naturally, they're things that exist in other martial arts, like wrestling, judo, sambo, whatever, and he figures it out. He figures all that stuff out on his own. Like, it would be easy for me to say, oh man, like, oh, he's a prodigy, he's trained with other people, but he's a prodigy of mine, and that just wouldn't be accurate. He's a prodigy in and of himself.
So he doesn't do any like us stuff now. He just does his own thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he comes into the gym, he drills on his own, he grapples with people. Now we do pads. He has he has a boxing coach that he works with outside of my gym or our gym. But he comes in, he does his own thing. And then, I'll say, okay, like, we're going to do this conditioning today because we're 6 weeks out of the fight. Or right now we don't have a fight book. So we have like a certain pad routine we do to develop some attributes in him. And so he'll do whatever it is I ask him to do. But as far as like coming in and hitting the jiu-jitsu class, he'll come in and he'll grab somebody, he'll go and he'll work on the stuff he wants to work on, and then he'll come in and he'll start rolling with everybody. And that's what's working for him. So it'd be very easy to try to box him in and say, no, everybody else does it this way, you're not special, fucking do it this way. But he is special. He is working, you know, he is studying film. And so you have to give him a long leash. But make no mistake about it, he's not a prima donna, and he will. If I come over and I say, "Hey," like the other day, he was working against the wall on some takedowns, and we were doing triangles from side control, a very unique, like, you know, you're giving up position for the submission thing, but it was something that fit really well into a position that he plays. And so, hey, come here, I want you to do this round. You know, like I want you to join my class and do this. He came over, he did the reps just like I asked him. The round was over, and then he went back and went back to what he was doing, and then he came back and rolled. Kind of
Now,
wild, huh?
do you have any other like students or people that we don't know about that might be coming along in a similar fashion to him?
No, I don't. I don't have anybody coming up in a similar fashion than him. May 1st, TJ Brown's fighting in the UFC. He's one of my favorite people in the world. Who's had an extremely tough career, but is much better than some of the bad luck he's had. I mean, he's in the UFC, but so he's obviously very good and he's amazing. But you know, he's a different kind of fighter. You know, he's talk about him and say, you know what, like I want to do that. Like I want to ignore my coach, and well, not to say he's ignoring me, but like I want to kind of do it my way. Make no mistake, like he did classes. You know what I mean? Like he did classes in the beginning, but you know he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu now, and he is a very, you know, he wrestles at a Division 1 level. He's, you know, he's done that in the UFC, but he does, you know, I've seen him wrestle Division 1 guys. He wrestles at a D1 level, and so he's at a place where he knows what's best for him, and he also knows to trust his coaches and cornermen, and he does that, and part of that trust is us trusting his process as well, and we're not changing it because it's working.
But when he comes in and does his own thing, do other people say, well, I want to do my own thing? Do you get any of that?
Yeah, I think we do get some of that, not because of him. I think it's the nature of some MMA guys. They're just not Bryce. They just don't have the aptitude that he has, the ability to see things that he sees, to be as experimental as he is, um, to have his physical attributes. You know, he's built like a gorilla, and he's strong as an ox. He's incredibly strong. You know, when he fought his UFC debut against Tyler Diamond, who's an absolute fucking savage, you know what he walked in that cage at? 146 pounds, maybe 147, fighting 145. You know, he didn't cut any weight for that fight. He was so outsized, you know, and still was able to pull out a tough fight in that fight. And when he fought Bobby Moffett, when they got out of the cage, they weighed them both. Bobby was shredded. Bryce looked kind of soft, and Bobby was over 10 pounds bigger than him when they walked out of the cage. And now
Now, does
he's
Bryce come from like
going out.
is he like his personal life? Did he grow up like was he a farming guy or, because some
No,
of these
no,
guys are naturally strong. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I'll tell you this. When I started training with Bryce, there was nothing about him physically that stood out to me. There was nothing about him that made me say, this kid's going to be the future champion of the welterweight division. I didn't think he sucked by any means, but I mean, I train with, we have a big gym. We have a lot of athletes. He was just another kid that was pretty good. But he turned into one. You know, he grew up in a rural area. But you know, he grew up, his dad wasn't in his life, and he just he just loves the country type stuff, and he goes out and does it, and he figures it out on his own. You know, he does a lot of things in the least efficient way possible, but he's out there doing it and learning it on the fly. He's just a doer, and so that's how he's doing it. But it's not this farm strength thing. It's not. I don't know. I just don't remember him being that strong, Todd. And then all of a sudden now, like if he gets his hands around you, you're his, and that's that. He somehow maybe he just squeezed really hard every time he engaged his arms and legs, and he developed his strength that way, because he doesn't really like he's not very strict about lifting weights. It's not from the weight room for sure.
So, what do you think as far as I mean, I know I don't want to put any opponents out there, but has the UFC like looking at anybody, or do you guys even focus on anybody, or you just wait until they give you somebody?
He will. So we look at people, and by we I mean mostly his manager will be like, hey, like we wanted Feely, and Feely ended up calling him out, but we looked at Feely as like kind of in that gatekeeper role, which I'm a huge Feely fan. Studying his film, I became a fan of him. And then after the fight with Bryce, I became an even bigger fan of his. But we wanted the Feely fight, and then it presented itself, and it was like, oh, this is perfect. So we're you know I'm not going to pretend that we're not looking at the path of least resistance kind of fights. We're looking at people that we think match up well for Bryce. But we don't call anybody out, and we don't call the shots with the UFC. The UFC normally calls his manager with an opponent, um, and Bryce always says yes. Bryce doesn't. He doesn't in the gym, whatever. Like he's not looking for any one person. He'll fight whoever. It's our job to try to manage his career in the best way possible. It's really his manager's job, but his manager is really good at communicating with me and with his corner man, Willie. And we have a really good synergy. His manager's name is Matt Weeble, and I only really work with two managers, Jason House and Matt Weeble, and I love them both. They're both amazing. They're both amazing at what they do. There was not another better manager than Jason House. I think Jason House is an amazing manager, but Matt Weeble is the best manager for Bryce Mitchell, without a doubt. Like Matt Weeble was his manager early in his career, and he knows how to work with Bryce because Bryce he is not a company man. He's not going to be anything other than himself. He's going to do what he wants to do. He takes 6 months between fights, and that's what he's going to do. They offer like, oh, hey, like when I fought the UFC, I was, and I wasn't there very long. I did 3 fights, but I did whatever the hell they wanted me to do. If they wanted, like I was a company man. I would kiss ass. I wanted to be there. That's not Bryce. Bryce is Bryce. He just happens to be the man right now coming up as a featherweight in the UFC, but he can be difficult to work with if, most people would just say yes. Bryce might say no. So it takes a certain kind of manager to be able to deal with him, and his manager does an absolutely fantastic job of that. He deserves a lot of credit, and Bryce deserves a lot of credit
Now,
for being real.
What's his reception been like in Arkansas? Because I know he's been really kind of pro Arkansas in his
Oh,
speeches and things
he's a
like that.
man. He's so good for the state. He's a real one, and people know that. He's a real guy, and they love him, man. Everybody loves him here. He gets a lot of support locally, um, and it gives the fighters coming out of Arkansas a lot of hope to go like, you know what, like you are doing it. TJ Brown is doing it. Like we don't have to think we're missing out by not being in Vegas or California, or Florida. Like we're right here in Arkansas, and we're training hard, and our sprawls are just as good as their sprawls, and our double legs and our wrist control and our cage work, or whatever it might be. We have these things that we do here just as well as anywhere else, and him being so vocal about it is really good for the fight community, and then the state itself. I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him. So he's loved here. He'll be royalty. You know, he's probably going to be the champion of the featherweight division, and you know, I think he'll always be Bryce Mitchell. You know, here in Arkansas.
Now, it's a tough division, like,
Jesus, yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, so you think he stacks up with everybody really well? I mean, his style
You
is so unique. Like we were talking about before, you don't really see a lot of guys that initiate the ground as well as he does. Outside the Dagestanis, of course.
outside of the Dagestanis, there's so many of them that are very Bryce like. Um, uh, you know, of course I'm going to say that. It's like, you know, and I believe it. I'm a very objective person. I'm very I don't blindly love my students. I see things for what they are. Uh, my partner Matt Hamilton is like loyal like a dog. You know, like he loves his fighters and thinks they're invincible, and that's a great quality to have. Uh, I don't have that. You know, I'm harder on the people that I love than I am on anybody else, and I'm having said all of that, Bryce can be the champion today in the UFC. His skill set is there. But you know, Todd, it's MMA. Like, you
Right.
know, I would be a fool to say he's going to be the champion, or you know, there was like Andre Fili. He dominated that fight. Fili put up a hell of a fight, but did you see that one, Bryce Mitchell versus Andre Fili?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, the fight took place where Bryce wanted it to take place, and Feely was the bigger guy from the bigger camp with way more experience, and it was a close fight, but it was a very decisive fight. Feely was always in it, but there was a knee Feely threw that landed, but not flush. That knee not landing, that's the MMA gods sprinkling their fairy dust, you know, that could have landed. And it
Yeah.
happens to a lot of fighters. So, you know, he could be derailed at any point, but he hasn't been, and he's improved every fight. So, and I've seen him in the gym, you know, I've seen him with world-class grapplers. I've seen him, you know, with active Division I wrestlers, and his striking is so good, Todd. His striking is so good. And that's why he's able to get in on everybody, is because you know, his striking is that good, and that creates his opportunities to get in. Um, that coupled with his Dagestani kind of style, he a lot of these featherweights aren't wrestling heavy.
Right.
You know, they're not wrestling
I'd say
heavy.
that of UFC fights in general. We just watched
Agreed.
Miocic and Ngannou, right? Miocic kind of gave up on wrestling the one time it didn't work.
And yeah, and I was like that mentally, and I think a lot of people are, but Bryce isn't. He believes in himself the way Marcelo Garcia believed in himself, and he'll shoot and shoot and shoot, and he'll just assume you'll break before he does. But he's going to get you down. If it's not this time, it's next time. If it's not this round, it's next round. But you're going to have to wrestle Bryce, and a lot of guys have the conditioning for 5 rounds, but they have the conditioning for 2020, 2021 5 rounds. You know, what we're seeing in MMA now, a lot of these guys that can go 5 rounds, they won't be able to go 5 rounds with Bryce. And that was something that impressed me with Andre Fili, that he was able to fight Bryce with so much tenacity the whole time, because Bryce gave him the business. And it wasn't until the third round that Fili stopped trying to get up and kind of like stayed on his back. And I don't think Fili broke. I just think he figured it's going to have to be a submission, like an armbar or triangle from the guard. But uh, it's a different kind of fight when you're fighting a guy pushing you up against the fence and chain wrestling. Ensign Inoue just joined. Man, I am a huge fan. That's super cool. Andre Benke, you as well. A huge fan. You guys, you guys deserve so much respect. Sorry to hijack that, but those. You know, I'm 39 years old. I was a kid in college training MMA, and it was so mysterious back then, Todd. You know, it's like the scouting report was what somebody posted on the underground. You know, so
Right.
yeah, it's cool. You know, now it's so different. Like I can, you know, you can really like scout somebody with the internet. These guys were heroes back then. uh, they were mysteries, you know.
Yeah, Ensign has a fighter now. I don't know if you've seen him in a Ryzen, Tsuyoshi Sidario, who used to be he was a sumo guy, but he lost all his sumo weight, and I think
Oh, cool.
is he 3-0 now, Ensign? Or
Hmm.
Ensign said he's kind of like a heavyweight Kid Yamamoto, kind of the similar, and
Oh, really? Nice.
so yeah, he's getting to be pretty popular in Ryzen, and
When
so
us old school guys get when we get a prospect that's, that's athletic and has potential and listens, it really brings us back to life. It's really fun to work with good students, and people like that are real blessings to trainers. I mean, we spend most of our days teaching the fundamentals, the basics, but then you have the advanced basics. Then we have the heart of like what's going on in the transitions, the moments in between the moments. And it's neat, if he's got a fighter like that, or like I have two fighters like that right now that I love. And it's really nice. It's true art because there's no money in it. It's true art to be able to share your knowledge and your experience with somebody who can digest it and then build on that. It's really nice. I appreciate being able to go to the UFC and be involved in those processes. Sometimes it's just like when Bryce was fighting his second fight against he fought Bobby Moffett from the MMA lab, a very tough fighter, you know, and Bryce will throw a head kick, like fairly often. He was throwing head kicks, and Bobby was a very conventional fighter, and his hands were up. And I remember like going into the second round and saying, "Hey, Bryce, look, the head kick's not there. Like stop throwing it. It's a lot of energy." And he threw one more and saw what I saw, and then he didn't throw anymore. He's like, okay, and like just that's super simple, but to be able to like know how important like that is in the fight, like not to waste the energy throwing that and being on one leg for that long, like throwing your leg all the way up into the air fruitlessly and bringing it all the way back, and to be able to see that and have a fighter like digest it in the fight and make that transition. That's a really nice for have athletes like that.
yeah. And who are some of the fighters you're watching? As somebody who's been around a long time, who are some of the fighters you study or prefer to watch?
It was Damian Maya for a long time. Um, the way that he utilized the half guard, and he had that wrestling mentality, and I mean he like threw wrestlers around with takedowns, um, but he would even pull half guard and then utilize the half guard in such a way to get top position, a path of least resistance. I studied him a lot. Somebody who's super conventional, Jorge Masvidal, like watching, like he's so fundamentally sound in his wrestling. He actually did very well with Maya on the ground, or did the best of folks on the ground. Um, is somebody that I like to watch because I'm not a TJ Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz kind of flair. That's not, I don't have that kind of footwork and experience, so I don't, and I've evolved outside of super conventional. We have a lot of ambidextrous stuff going on with our striking, but when you see somebody like Masvidal with pressure, or like a Nate and Nick Diaz, kind of like the way they funnel people to throw straight shots so they can check hook and counter people, like I'm kind of rambling now. You were asking who I'm studying. I'm studying those guys. I'm studying Khabib, the nuances of what he's doing on the ground, not just the techniques, Todd, but the decision making. The timing of the techniques.
Right.
That's a lot of it. You got to cook a guy before you submit him. Um, you put a hook in, you can chase the back and chase the neck. You can work a 3/4 Nelson and try to get into a Darce or a Japanese necktie. Those are, or, rolling Kimuras. These are all like good techniques, but they're, they all come with a certain risk. But control is the name of the game. And if you control a guy, you're cooking them. And if you're cooking them, they're going to make mistakes. And then the submissions will come. So Khabib is, a lot of people give him a hard time because he retired. He didn't have as many title defenses as other people, but as dominant as he was in the division, against the number 2, number 3, number 4 people, it was a different level of dominance than I think John Jones and GSP, those guys had. So Khabib's one for sure.
So do you think Makhachev will have the same kind of success as him?
But he very well could. Yeah. I mean, you know the game. He takes a flying knee in his next fight from an athlete,
Right.
gets knocked out. He may never be the same after that. So nothing's guaranteed, but you're seeing the striking of these guys surpassing the other guys as well. So I mean, what are you gonna do? You got guys that if they can strike well, they're gonna get in on the takedowns, and that's a problem. It's one thing when you had like an early Khabib and you had a chance of sticking and moving and beating him to the punch, like Aljo did, but not Aljo. What's his name? Lost to the real estate agent in New York, the UFC fighter.
Oh, Alaquinta.
Alaquinta,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was like a good time, like at that time Khabib was beatable. But now, like, he showed his boxing with Poirier, and you just have to be good enough to get him to defense and get back to it. So yeah, those Dagestanis are a real problem. And their mentality and their style of wrestling is so conducive to MMA. I think you're going to see the athletes from Africa and the Dagestanis really take over for a while. I think the best training for MMA is here in America, but the Dagestanis are coming over with a decade and a half of fight sport experience. You then go into AKA and training there. Like, that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Right. Right.
It's a problem for the UFC too, because if you have a bunch of Russian champions whose English sucks, like they're just not marketable. You only need 2 or 3 Russians, as far as marketability is concerned. But that will be a unique thing if you have a whole roster of champions that can't speak English or don't speak it very well. That's a problem.
And so maybe as we're I know that you had a couple questions here, actually. I'll Kid Cannon TV was asking about, he was kind of asking a technical question, leg locks in MMA. He was saying, should they be used to sweep, or, I mean, I know you can't like pigeonhole it into one thing, but that's what he
Dude,
was
they're 100% legit. They're 100% legit. Leg locks they are not like wrestling. And what I mean by that is, as you chain wrestling, things get better. Okay? With leg locks, your first attempt is your best one. Your best one. Second attempt can be just as good. After those two, it starts turning into a shit show and you need to get off your ass. And so leg locks are legit, man. They can be used to sweep really well. TJ Brown fought in the Contender Series and got knocked on his ass, was concussed, went for a heel hook, and was mature enough as the guy turned to not try to marry the heel hook and pray that it landed. And he wrestled to the top, and he ended up submitting his opponent later in the fight, and securing a UFC contract with that maturity of using it for a sweep. And TJ doesn't have a great heel hook. I mean, he knows how to do a heel hook, but it's not like like it's not his move. Like I know how to do an arm and guillotine, but it's not my move. Um, so you can definitely use it to sweep, but it's also and Kid Cannon runs the Homegrown Fighter series on YouTube of Bryce Mitchell. It's gold. If you haven't seen it, Todd, YouTube Homegrown Fighter with Bryce Mitchell, you will absolutely love it, and you'll lose the rest of your evening. They're hilarious. Little mini documentary, 15-minute documentaries of Bryce, and some other people. But yeah, I mean, leg locks are like anything else, you know. Like if you go for an armbar from the mount, and the guy ends up on top of you and beating the brakes off you, and you're gonna be like, oh no, arm bars suck or whatever. And it's like, nah, like, you know, they're good and bad, depends on the person putting them on. But if you can break a guy's ankle, MMA or not, you know, like that's a good submission. And again, if you get it from the bottom and they flee the ankle lock and you use it to sweep, that's great as well. So it's not one or the other by any means. Just knowing when to do one or the other, when to commit to the submission, which I consider it not a submission, when to commit to the break. Because if you can't break the ankle, then you don't need to be committing to it. When to commit to that or the sweep is really what it comes down to.
Kid Cannon was asking about, I don't know if you saw this, but somebody lost a finger the other day.
I
You know,
saw a
did you see
picture.
that? A
I
guy
saw,
lost a finger in a fight.
yeah, I don't know how it happened. I saw a picture of it. It's gross.
I guess he was asking what you thought about it. He asked if you ever lost a finger in a fight. I think obviously you haven't,
No,
but
that's gross, man. I hate those gross injuries, like when Silver broke his leg and uh, like that sucks. Ugh. That's what I think about it.
now, you know, you mentioned Brown, TJ Brown, I think it was. We didn't talk much
Mhm.
about him, but how would you? I mean, I know you talked about Bryce. Maybe talk about a little bit about him and what what makes
Yeah,
him unique. Or
TJ's a much yeah. Um, TJ's a much more conventional fighter. Very, very high. He's a professional boxer. His Muay Thai is very high level. His elbows in the clinch, his Thai clinch, his sweeps off, his ability to catch kicks. He never wrestled in school. Bryce wrestled a few semesters in high school. TJ never did, but TJ wrestles at a very high level, and he's also a brown belt under me in jiu-jitsu. Very conventional
Mhm.
fighter, and he has had some really tough luck in fights. But he has so he had a long career. He had like 27 fights before he broke into the UFC. He was fighting Jordan Griffin and just dominating him all over the place, and got caught with a sneaky guillotine um, from a position that he used to pass in most of his fights. Just you know, I mean, Jordan did what he does, and that's cool. But him and Jordan Griffin could fight 10 times, and TJ would beat Jordan 8 or 9 out of 10. But you know, he lost that fight. His second UFC fight, he got cracked in the first minute of the first round and cracked his he fractured his orbit. He ends up losing the first 2 rounds, eats a bunch of calf kicks, comes back and wins the third round, puts on a great show, like coming forward, switched southpaw, and ended up getting a third fight in the UFC going 0-2, which you have to really show something to get that kind of third chance in the UFC. So TJ embodies what it really means to be a fighter. He has the heart, and he has the lungs to do it. He has the technique to do it. And all he needs is the MMA gods to just chill the fuck out and give him a chance and let him fight. But he's a kid that came into my gym as a kid. He's been with us 10 years. He's learned. He's masterful in every position. He's very well rounded. But my favorite thing about him is, you know, he got a girl pregnant young, and he's got a 9-year-old son, and he's the is like an amazing dad. I get emotional just talking about it because I'm a dad, you know. But he's a
Is, is that because you were close with your father? Oh,
close with my father. We communicate. Um, I love my dad, but you know he wasn't an all-star dad, but I had an all-star mom, and I think a lot of my emotion from that comes from it comes from my love for him, and just knowing like what just I just have a lot of respect for that, like he puts the time into his career. He also puts the puts the time into being a great dad, and I value that. Jesus Christ. But
yeah.
EJ, he deserves more. You know, he's had the toughest road of any MMA fighter. So yeah, but he's an impressive fighter. He's really good. He's one of Bryce's main training partners. And just a really really well. And I think May 1st, I'm gonna um, I'm gonna be betting on him for sure, and I'm excited to see him fight Kai Kamaka from Hawaii. It's gonna be a good fight.
Yeah, Kai Kamaka is yeah, his dad was fighting back in the day too.
Who's was Kai's?
Yeah. Yeah, his dad fought a few times. I don't know if you remember his father,
Huh?
Kai's
What was his
father, that
father's
is.
name? Yeah, what was his father's name?
Kai Kamaka. Same
Really?
same name.
No shit. I'll have to
Yeah.
look him up. That's cool. Kai's a cool fighter.
So like, Ronald John is like his uncle, you know, Ray Cooper, all those guys, they were all like a family.
Huh? I didn't know
Ronald
that,
John and
man.
Ray Cooper are married to Kai Kamaka's sisters.
Hmm.
So Ronald John and Ray Cooper are like Kai
The
Kamaka's son,
family.
the third.
Yeah,
I think he's the third. They're his uncles.
that's fucking dope, man. That's like MMA royalty.
Yeah, yeah,
Kai's
yeah. So those
a
guys.
tough fighter, man. That there's you always like to like they're from Hawaii. That island culture of that's cool. Like the Mexicans, like are known for being fighters, and it's 2021, so like I say things like that, and I think, oh man, someone's gonna get offended, but man, fuck it, like the Mexican style boxing's a real thing, and they're known for staying in the pocket.
Right. Yeah, Svensson said he liked that you are close with your students like that. He said that's kind of his style as well.
Yeah, well, when you have a small gym, you marry your students. I never want it to be That's not true. There was a time that I wanted to run a fight team, you know, and even Matt Hamilton and I even bought a house that we were going to use as like a fighter house, but it didn't end up coming to fruition. And I realized the way most fighters treat their careers and treat their coaches and treat themselves, that I I didn't want to deal with that. I don't want, like, a lot of coaches didn't have an MMA career themselves. So they really, really enjoy piggybacking off of athletes and enjoy training them. And some of them, that's not the main motivation. I'm not casting a big blanket over everybody, but a lot of people um, are are getting the clout from their fighters and being part of that. But, you know, I was never a major fighter, but I did fight. I had 29 MMA fights as a extremely unathletic, dorky kid, and ended up, you know, having a win in the UFC and having a win in Bellator. I did the best I could with what I had. Um, you know, I know who I am. Uh, so I have no interest in like athletes. I have no interest in winners. I have an interest in people. And that's what I have for Bryce and TJ. I'm vested in them. I have fighters at my gym now that I won't corner. I won't
Mm.
spend my weekend to go corner them because I don't feel like they do. I don't feel like they live up to their potential. I've had fighters like there was one named David Lindsay. You know, he did the best he could with what he had, and he was a dog, and he had some big wins. And I would corner him anywhere because he worked with what he had and did the best he could with what he had at the time, and he was a dog. Um, but then I have other fighters that, man, I just don't feel like they put the work in, and so I'm not going to take time away from my garden or hunting or my wife. I'm not going to do that. Like, if I'm 39 years old, I'm halfway through my life. If I'm lucky, I will not go and corner you and spend my weekend sitting at a fucking shitty ass MMA show with intermissions that are 10 minutes that end up being 45 minutes, um, listening to drunks yell. You know, I will only do that if I love you, and I think that you are giving 100%. Everybody else, because that's what us coaches do. We give such a large part of our life away to these fighters, and it's a lot of them switch camps all the time, and they don't train like they should. They don't listen to you. They don't respect you. They just use you, you know, at the moment. And I won't do it. I won't do it. I watched and I'll tell you where that comes. That comes from experience. And also, I watched a documentary one time with Joe Frazier, and he had a boxing gym in Chester, PA, which is a shithole. And it was close to where I grew up in Philadelphia, Ridley, PA, which is also a shithole, but not near as bad as Chester. And dude, Joe Frazier's Joe fucking Frazier.
Yeah.
They're videoing him, you know, and he's in the gym, and they're kind of doing a documentary, and he goes upstairs to like the office or apartment upstairs, and he sits down, and he's kind of ashy. You know, he looks, you know, he just looks like an old man that's not well taken care of, and he's just talking like it's lunchtime. And Joe's, he was a world champion, and he trained good fighters. And he opens up a paper sack and he pulls out a can of Campbell's soup, and that was his lunch. And I watched that, and I knew at that moment that that wasn't going to be me. Good, that wasn't going to be me. I wasn't going to chase these fighters around and give my whole life to them because they never come back and take care of the coaches. They go on to live their lives, and maybe they had five different coaches. They don't remember the person that brought them up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized watching that, like, I was not going to be that person. Like the Kronk gym, right? It's no longer a thing. Think about all the champions that came out of there, the millions of dollars that that gym produced. It doesn't take a whole lot of money to keep a gym running. Nobody came back and saved that gym. So
Yeah.
coaches should be real selective with who they really invest their time in. You know, that's a real thing, and I that's in the forefront of my mind on who I spend my time with.
Now, I appreciate you taking the time as we're kind of winding down. Is there anything you kind of want to leave this interview with, or something you might want to let people know, or where they can follow you, those kind of things?
Oh hell, I don't care if anybody follows me. I I just I just want genuine. I just want people to be authentic and genuine. And when we're talking about Bryce, that's something that's real. He rarely works out with his first coach, but his first coach, his name was William McLaughlin, had like the worst management ever. Was fighting like Jeff Bedard, Asunkao, and like these guys coming out of Arkansas. He's a machinist by day, had kids. He's like he had the toughest like management and fight career. He was a really good fighter though, and that's the guy who pretty much raised Bryce and trained him and took him all over the place as an amateur fighting. And he lives like almost 2 hours away now. But when it's time to go to the UFC, um, that's the guy in the corner. And even though he's not in the camp a whole lot, like there's an emotional connection there, and it's like it's just authenticity. That's what's important to me. And it's like what I was telling Bryce the other day, or I wasn't telling Bryce, I was talking about it, and Bryce was there. It's like, the cornerman there's two parts of work in the corner. The first part is the technical aspects of it. Like you got to read the landscape, you got to see what's going on, you got to give good advice at the right time. You got to know your fighter. You got to coach, but not overcoach. You got to instruct or not instruct. That's obvious, right? But the other aspect of a cornerman is trust. And if the trust is there, they're going to listen and do everything that you advise them to do. But if the trust isn't there, then there's going to be a hitch. So that's the important aspect of a corner, is that being competent, but also the trust. So anyways, the long and short of it is, I run my gym, I teach my classes, I work with just a couple fighters, but at the end of the day, like you're just looking for those real connections, because life's it's so short. So that's what I'd leave it with, like whatever it is people are doing, like find the right camp for you, find the right coach for you, put the right people around you, but you're looking for people that are truly genuine and authentic, not people trying to fit in or fake the funk or use you for clout or whatever. Like, you need that like genuine connection. That's what I like. That's really it.
Which is tougher, coaching or houses?
Coaching. Fuck the houses. I most of my clients are awesome because they're most of the people I work with are members of some of the gyms that I have an interest in. Um, and real estate can be a pain in the ass, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing compared to coaching. The highs and lows of coaching are so much greater than the highs and lows of fighting. And you don't realize that until you become a coach, because when you're a fighter, you don't have the highs and lows of a coach, of being a coach as a reference point. So as a fighter, the lowest low is losing a fight. But then if you're a fighter like me or some of these other great fighters, the when you know what it feels like to lose, that gut-wrenching feeling, when you know what it feels like to anticipate all the questions, comments, and people trying to be nice, but like pep you up after a loss, like when you have to go through the motions of all of that, like a coach knows what that loss is like and what it means to lose. So we don't have sympathy, we have empathy. And so we lose with you, so the the coaching is you're all in. It's way tougher. And that's why I won't do it for everybody. I mean, I'll train anybody in jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is one of those things that not everybody competes, and most people aren't all in. It's a sport. It's a way to better your life. But MMA is different. MMA is a whole other ball game. If you're fighting MMA at a pro level, if you're trying to get to the UFC, you really feel like you're living and dying with every fight, and the coaches are living and dying with you. If they care, if they're good coaches, if they're really present and emotionally there.
Well, I appreciate the time, Roli. It's awesome to talk with you. I think it was great stuff, man. I really enjoyed your insight, and hope I can catch up with you again, maybe after one of Bryce's fights or whatever.
Dude, I'll come on anytime. I enjoy doing podcasts. I enjoy talking and sharing what's going on in my mind. I know I have a lot to offer in that realm. But dude, reach out to Matt Hamilton too. I
Yeah,
think
I
he'd be
will
a
for
good
sure.
asset. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's old school. He's a real one. I started training with him in '98, and me and him have been through so much shit together, done so much, So he'll be a good one.
All right, for sure, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the invite. Super enjoyed seeing all the old school guys pop in and listen. You've got a great little thing you're doing here. I didn't even know about it really, but now I'm a fan, and I'm going to be going back and listening to a lot of your podcasts.
I'll keep it coming. Don't worry. I got more
Hell
stuff
yeah,
coming.
man. Perfect. All right. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, take care, man. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Yes, sir. Bye-bye.